Welcome to Scorpion Studio, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have our remarkable friend back with us. His name is Åge Nost. He's an author of the book Spiritual Science and Higher Conscious Thinking. And not only did he research this topic and wrote a book about it, he's also a pilot, a radio and TV show host, and so much more. The list goes on and on. How he does all these things, I don't know. Well, with no further ado, let's talk to the man himself right now. Hello, Åge, and welcome back, my friend. How are you?
Hello. I'm sitting here in the southwest of the United States and having a great time. I'm having the time of my life, and I love doing these shows, especially with someone that is sitting back there in my country of birth, Norway.
Yeah, you are originally from Norway, and our listeners, I think they are familiar with you already. But you moved to the US at the age of 25, right?
Yeah, that was back in the dark ages. 1972, I went over here to go to flight school.
Yeah, so you found actually the American dream.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it is still there. It's kind of difficult to find anymore, but yeah, it's still there. But all you have to do is to think different, and you find it.
Well, you're pursuing a dream anyway. You are still doing so many things. You're quite grown up now, aren't you?
No. I'm not grown up. Growing up is that's voluntary. Getting old is mandatory, but growing up is voluntary, and I refuse to do that.
All right, yeah.
I still enjoy a bad joke now and then.
Oh, so do I. And in my mind, I'm getting younger and younger.
Yeah. Age is only a number, and it is only a set mindset. Because you remember, that's for another show, but let's prompt it so they can look for it coming up. And that is when in 2009, the Nobel Committee gave the Nobel Prize to 3 doctors that found an enzyme that reverses the aging process. And I write about that in my book, explain it very well, and we also will do a show on that later on.
That's great. Apropos show, today's topic, what are we going to talk about today, Åge?
Oh, I don't know. I can pretty much go anywhere, but I mentioned earlier that maybe talk about the hollow earth, and that maybe the flat earthers are off to the wrong avenue.
Well, I am convinced they are wrong. But even it's hard to discuss with them because I'm not a scientist. How can I disprove them of being right? But we get into that as we go along here. But first, how did you come to the topic hollow earth? How did you get this interest for that?
Oh, that dates back decades when I got my hands on a book. It's called The Smoky God. That was about in the 1880s. There was a Norwegian actually that was fishing in the North Pole region, and he got caught up in some currents, and he got to drift into an area in the North Polar region that had fresh water. It had land, had trees, and he got ashore and he saw animals and huge trees, kind of like the south in the northwest of the United States, where you have trees that is over 100 meters tall. And he spent several years in that region. It came all the way through the inside of the earth and came out in the South Polar region. So, yeah, there is something to this. So, and I have also photographic evidence of it, which I'll show you in a bit.
This guy you just talked about, he isn't...
Olaf,
yeah, Johansson or something like that? Yeah, and he traveled with his father, didn't he, the first time?
Yes, he did.
Oh, yeah. This is... I heard about that. It's actually fascinating. And then you started to research this topic further.
Yeah, I did. And I went into the history of things, and I found, for thousands of years, we've been told that Earth was flat. And now, 9 to 12,000 years ago, they knew it was round. They made drawings of it. They wrote about it, and in the later millennia, the first mention of a round Earth that I found in the later millennia dates to about 600 BC. And that was in Greek mythology. And then in the 3rd century BC, in Hellenistic astronomy, they talk about the fact that the Earth has to be round. Because about that time, there were some experiments done that prove it was round. And it was gradually accepted among the people in the Middle Eastern regions there. And for Plato, which was born in 427 BC, and he taught his students in his school that the Earth was round. Aristotle, he did the same thing. He lived about the same time.
Yeah.
And he made the observations that there are stars in the northern region of Europe that can be seen. But the further south you go, they go lower and lower in horizon, to the point where you are in Egypt and Africa. They go below the horizon. They cannot be seen anymore.
Right.
And that could not happen if the Earth was flat. Even back then, they started using science to prove that can't be flat. It would not, if it was flat, it wouldn't matter where you were. You would be able to see them, even if they were close to the horizon. And in fact, I have my own evidential story to that effect. I flew for a living for 23 years, and when I was in Minneapolis in the late 1970s, I was teaching flying, and once in a while, I entered into a bet with someone. I told them, if I can show you how the sun can come up in the west, if I can show you that, you owe me a bottle of scotch. And once in a while, somebody said, sure, I'll get you a bottle of scotch. Everybody knows the sun goes down in the west, okay? So I told them to come out like 7 o'clock in the evening or something like that. And we waited around until right about when the sun goes down. We got in an airplane. We got up to, a little bit of altitude. And we sat there, waited for the sun to go down below the horizon. It was all gone, invisible. And then I put the nose up, climb at least 800 foot per minute, and we go up higher and higher. And then you can see the sun slowly come up over the horizon again. And one time, I think we flew to about 16,000 feet, and that sun was way above the horizon at that altitude.
Wow.
And the guy just sat there, I did this probably 10, 15 times. I got a lot of scotch out of it. And I could prove it. And of course, the rumor got around, so nobody, after a while, nobody went for the bet. But it is obvious, the higher you get, the sun come up around the curvature of the Earth, so you can see it again in the western sky. So that tells you, if it was flat, it could not do that. Now, it could become maybe a little higher if it was already above the horizon, but if it was below the horizon, a flat Earth does not provide for the theory of the sun to go below the horizon.
Yeah.
It is always above the horizon, so that could not happen.
Exactly. But what I was thinking about, it is very strange. First, we were told the Earth was flat, right? It's about several hundred years ago. And suddenly somebody comes up and tries to convince the establishment that the Earth was round. He got house arrest. Some people got burnt at the stake, And nowadays, we have this flat Earth community rising out of nowhere. Why is that happening? Why?
Well, it's really very simple, actually, because there are people that is working with the CIA in the United States, and they have admitted that they created this theory and fed it into the social media where it started, to create discord and confusion among the people, because they want to be in control and divide and conquer. So that's how they do it.
And besides, that could be the reason as well why they want to hide the fact about the hollow earth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because something must be down there, as you said.
Yeah, and the thing is that the hollow earth also can be proven now, because recently there was a paper issued by a Harvard University professor where they explained they were using a form of ground-penetrating radar, and they found huge cavern underneath the ground, and they found continents down there. And also at the Washington University under Dr. Vicession, I don't know how you pronounce it, but Dr. Vicession, he wrote an analysis of 600,000 seismograms showing another ocean under the Atlantic Ocean. And that ocean was, they didn't get quite accurate on it, between 800 to 1,100 miles down into the ground. They saw this huge cavern, and they went to other areas thousands of miles away, and they still found this huge cavern. So it is a very large one that now we can prove by those seismograms that there is a cavern inside the earth. And that is what we show with the pictures of showing the entrance into the North Pole. So, you know, we haven't been told the truth about what's going on in there, and the science doesn't know maybe until recently. And of course, then, you know, we got the lies of NASA that seems to cover everything up. And there is we have this cavern that can be proven. But there's also this picture. And if you go to my website, I have a picture of a NASA print that show an 800-mile wide hole at the North Pole region, right where the North Pole should be, 700 to 800 foot. Because it was taken by the ESA-7 satellite, sitting in a stationary orbit right above the North Pole, about 32,000 miles up into space. And it was taking a picture straight down towards the North Pole. It shows an 700, 800 mile wide gaping hole going into the Earth. And if you ask NASA about this picture, they don't say it is fake, or they don't say it's manufactured. They say nothing. The best comment you can get from them is that, well, we don't know.
Right.
And if you go to my website, actually, you can see this picture, and that is www.universal-consciousness-show.com.
Okay.
And click on the media coverage there, and then go down and look at the picture gallery, and bring that up. Go to page 2 in the picture gallery, and the upper left-hand corner, you can see a picture of that NASA print showing the huge hole going in to the in the center of the Earth.
Right. You know what I'm wondering about. Off the air, I was talking to you, and I told you that I was reading several books about a German guy who was a member of a secret society in Germany. And this secret society got dissolved in 2006. The meaning behind it was that the knowledge, what they have, should be spread through the internet and in books to the world, which made other secret societies very angry. What I read in these books was so fascinating. They're saying more or less the same thing as this Johansen did, this Olaf Johansen. And they confirmed a lot of stuff. And Olaf Johansen, he ended up in the mental hospital. They ridiculed him, and put him into a mental hospital, and case closed, And what I'm wondering about, in the Antarctica, or was it the North Pole, I don't remember, where all the high-profile politicians and even the religious leaders were down there. And even the old astronaut, Buzz Aldrin, was there at the age of 82 years. And he sent a text message, more or less for the whole world to see, where he wrote, "It's pure evil down there." I don't believe that. I don't believe that. They want to scare us, because this is, I think, is my theory, this is why the religions are telling us hell is below.
Yeah.
They don't want us to have contact or knowledge about this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, the South Polar region, there is an opening into the center of the Earth there also. It is much smaller, but it still can be seen if you were to fly in that region. The problem is that both the North Polar region and the South Polar region is restricted airspace, military prohibited airspace, not restricted. Prohibited. You have to have special permission to fly over those areas. Now, and some people will say, no, wait a minute, I got on the airplane in New York, we fly over the pole and go to Tokyo. Yeah, but you don't fly over the pole. You fly all the way up into the polar region, and you fly around the periphery of the North Pole.
Yeah.
And inside the rim of the North Pole, actually on the outside of the rim, that's where you have the navigation beacons and everything set up. You cannot fly over the North Pole because there is no North Pole. That's in the middle of the hole.
Yeah, and there is no navigation.
And that's exactly what Fridtjof Nansen, which he was a Norwegian too, and he was a polar explorer. He had 2 books written, and I have both of the books. He makes some astounding statements in those books. And there's some newer versions of it, which I haven't seen, but the old original books was probably printed around 1915, 1913, something like that. They're not on the shelf because, they're written in Norwegian and nobody would understand it except me. So he said he was going straight towards the North Pole. He was at 80 degrees northerly latitude, went further north, got to 81, got to 82, he got further north, got to 83, and then he got further north, got to 82, and he said, wait a minute, it's supposed to be 84th degree northerly latitude. His sextant told him it was 82 degrees again, it should be 84. So he went back and forth over that distance. And he could not find anything further north than 83 point something, close to 84 degree northerly latitude. There was nothing further north. So he said, well, there's something wrong with my instruments here because there is nothing further north, so I declare this to be the North Pole.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Then he went back, and the science didn't buy that. So they did not give him the recognition of being at the North Pole. So, of course, that pissed him off royalty, but he couldn't do anything because he really wasn't at the North Pole. He came in his newer books, I am told, that he says he got within 4 degrees. I think in the old books he said he got within 6 degrees of the of the North Pole in the original writings. So it tells us there is missing 6 degrees between where he were and the North Pole. So if you overlay those 6 degrees to the 800-mile wide hole that you have pictures and NASA print of on my website, it matches perfectly.
Wow.
So that hole is there.
Right. So there is an entrance.
Yeah.
And what did you find out? What is underneath or in the hollow Earth?
Well, then to go to that one, you can go to Olaf Janssen, and he talks about what's in there, 12-foot tall people, and also at the North Polar region there is a Viking settlement, and of course the Germans are all the way through that inside the old German society.
Yeah.
The Germanic heritage is perfectly preserved up there. But on the other hand, we have Admiral Byrd. He flew, and on my website in the blogs, if you blog down to about probably somewhere around December 2018, no, make it January, you'll find a blog that show Admiral Byrd's diary, where he explained when he was flying north from the northern part of Alaska. He flew straight north, and he flew in through the hole, and he found green, luscious fields. He found forests. He saw huge animals, like mammoth-like animals on the ground. And then he ended up making contact with some flying discs that came up on both of his sides, and they captured the airplane in evidently some type of a tractor beam type. When I say tractor beam, we're thinking Star Trek, right? Well, they've already built one. It's what we know now. Science know how to do it. So it is there. And they captured the airplane and carried it with them and landed it on a platform, and he was taken to see one of the leaders of that region. And he explains all this in his diary. Actually, the first part of it is the flight log, and the second part of it is the diary.
Exciting.
So it is there. And another thing is that the Eskimos in northern Greenland, they have known for a very long time that there is warm weather and green grass up north. And that's why when the Viking settlement on Greenland, which lasted there from about the year 800 to about somewhere around 1400, they had the Norwegians and the Icelandics, they had a settlement on the eastern shores of Greenland. Actually, no, wait a minute. That's the western part that they had it, southwestern part. And they, after a while, there were very little wood up there. They ran out of wood. They couldn't make boats anymore. They couldn't have firewoods anymore. And they kind of died out. They couldn't, without fire, it's tough to win, when you're 30 below.
Yeah.
So they relied on the Eskimos to help them out, and the Eskimos kept telling them, go to the north. There's warm weather up there. And somewhere around the years of 1400, right in the middle of that mini ice age, which they had about that time, they headed north. They left message behind saying, we are going to the north to warm weather, and we have Inuit guides with us to show us where it is. And of course, they were never heard from again. But that's very, very explanatory, because there is... we go back to Fridtjof Nansen, which was going to the North Pole. He said that when he got close to the polar region, he found dead bees on the ice.
Wow.
Now, I mean, dead bees on the ice 1,000 miles away from the closest place where you would have a green leaf or a flower?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And he also said that they were blowing very fine sand in the air. Sand does not come from ice.
No.
That wind came from the inside, blowing sand with it.
I see.
And also, he found blotches of red and yellow blotches on the ice, which he took samples of, and later they found it to be pollen from flowers. 1,000 miles away from the closest flower? No,
Yeah.
I don't buy that.
So things are coming out in the open more and more every day.
Yeah.
So that what could mean that we sooner or later will have contact maybe with several beings living in Hollow Earth?
Yeah. In fact, we already have. They are walking among us. They look just like us, so we'll never know it. And they are well educated in our languages. They are here. They are trying to influence us in some ways, but they have not gotten as far with their influence to affect the actions of the psychopaths running governments.
Exactly. And I read as well that they can only do what is allowed for them to do without infringement of our free will.
Yeah, that is
because we need to be aware about these things, and then we could ask for help. But the problem is that when we are talking about these things, maybe a lot of listeners will say, oh my God, these guys, they take off, they're completely crazy, can't happen. The fact is there are so many things coming up into the broad daylight for everybody to see. We just have to open our eyes and wrap our mind around it and start to do our own research, because things are completely different than we are being told.
Yeah. And if we take it from there to the next stage, the flat earthers say that Earth is flat, but the moon is round. How can that be?
Yeah.
If Earth and the moon both are formed in space, in vacuum.
Yeah.
If you take a little water droplet, put it in vacuum and spins it, it turns round. It doesn't turn flat. There's a guy in town here, John, he's a flaming flat earther. And I asked him one time, science says that it should be round, but what made it flat? He looked at me and he said, God did it.
Yeah, that's the answer I get as well.
Yeah. They have turned it into a religion.
Exactly.
And, when you have religion, you can't argue with those people. Just shake your head and walk away.
Yeah.
But if you look at the moon, whenever we start looking into the facts about the moon, nothing makes sense. The more we find out about the moon, the more questions we get. And accepted science says that it is made from titanium and aluminum, the major metals in it. Earth is mostly made from iron and nickel.
Right.
We know from carbon dating a lot of the stuff here on Earth that Earth is about 4 billion years old. That's about it. Now, if we carbon date the rocks that came from the moon, we find that it to be 4.5 billion years old. 500 million years older.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Well, first of all, we can question, where did the rocks come? Well, they didn't come in 1969 when they told us that they went to the moon. They probably came back maybe in the mid-50s when they went to the moon the first time.
Yeah.
Americans anyway. And if you're 500 million years older than Earth, it is obvious that it was not even formed in the same cloud of dust as Earth was. With other words, not in the same galaxy. Now, we can chew on that one for a while, but there is a difference. And the fact that it is made from different materials support the fact that it was not formed in this galaxy. And also, the moon is in an impossible orbit. The capture, the theory of the capture theory of the moon in Earth orbit, that doesn't fly either. It is about 1 in a million chance that it could get captured at that speed, at that distance.
Yeah.
It just almost couldn't happen.
Yeah.
And if it was not captured, where did it come from? How did it get there? Well, what I'm concerned, there's only one choice left, and that it was flown there and parked.
Right.
It is a spaceship.
Right, I heard that too. And besides, we see only one side of the moon all the time.
Yeah. And that's an explanation for that. We know it is round because it wobbles a little bit. It wobbles about 6 degrees back and forth. And that from the time that it is 6 degrees in one direction and it wobbles on the other way, we can see a little bit of the backside of it. You can see there is continuous craters back there, and then it wobbles back and those craters disappear. So we know that it is round and it wobbles.
Yeah.
That can't be argued. But if it was a spaceship and parked there, who did it?
Yeah.
Who is inside of it? Well, on my website, I also have pictures of a huge hole, several holes actually, in the moon's surface going in to the surface. There is one hole on the right side, as we look at it, of the Sea of Crisis. And for people, let's say they have put a very strong telescope on that and keep turning the knob so they can follow it as it travels across the sky, they can see on a rare occasion little bitty lights traveling out of that hole and going into the hole. So there's something leaving and coming from that hole, which tells you, of course, again, that there's something inside the moon.
Yeah.
See, if we run the numbers on it, the moon shouldn't even be there, because we know how big the Earth is. We know the weight of Earth.
Yeah.
We know how much gravity it puts out, gravitational attraction. We know the size of the moon, we know the weight of the moon, and we know how much gravity that weight creates. So it has to be we know the distance and the speed it is traveling around Earth. It's the speed around Earth that keeps it in orbit, because it seems to be falling all the time. If the moon was not rotating, it would slowly be drawn towards Earth and it would crash. It's the speed around Earth that keeps it in orbit. And it has to be at a certain speed, otherwise it would either leave orbit or crash into Earth. Right. That speed is the one that is almost 1 in a million to be able to, by accident, happen.
Right.
So if we run this through a computer, we find out that the moon is too big and too heavy and traveling too slow for this orbit that it has. It really, from the size and the speed and the weight of it, it should be twice the distance from Earth.
Yeah.
But if the moon is hollow, then it makes perfect sense. It could be where it is, because it is lighter. Yeah. It can stay closer to Earth.
Right. Right.
So these are things that we cannot avoid. These are facts of science.
Yeah.
And see, the flat earthers, they have turned this flat Earth into a religion, and you cannot argue with them.
No, exactly. Exactly. That's what I found out too. Besides, planets, or most of the planets, as I read in these books, they give a resonant sound of it.
Yeah.
And it only can create a sound if it's hollow.
That's correct. The Russians proved that when they crashed one of their probes into the moon. They were recording vibrations. They were ringing like a gong for hours and hours afterward, like it was hollow, like you tap on a bell.
Yeah, yeah.
So they said this sound could not happen unless the moon is hollow.
Right. Which reminds me that inside people, or people which are within the system, knowingly or not knowing, they are given things to put out. Which reminds me of a very famous group in my youth, in the 70s, Pink Floyd, which made an album, and they called it The Dark Side of the Moon. And I always wondered, what do they mean by that? Where do they get this from?
Well, of course, they know there's no dark side, but there's a side that we don't see. So
exactly, that is actually meant with it, yeah.
Well, the reason that the moon is not rotating around is because it is not round either. There is somewhere along its travel, from where it came to Earth, it was hit by an object. And there's a huge bulge. There is a wedge sticking out on the other side.
Yeah.
that we don't see a lot of pictures of it, but I have seen it. And that wedge there, it creates more mass on the far side of the moon than it is on this side of the moon away from the center. So where there is more mass, it's going to be affected by centrifugal force more so than the lesser mass. That's why the far side is further away, and it'll stay further away. In fact, if we really got into the weird here, there are writings dating back about 12,000 years starting in India, and they say that there were two moons in the past. One was white like the one we have, and the other one was blue.
Ah.
Wow, how about that?
Wow.
Yeah. So what happened to the blue one?
Got taken away.
Yeah, it left. Where did it go? Well, we don't know, unless, of course, it's still there and it's cloaked. But I don't know what to think about that. There are some people saying it could be. Well, yeah, maybe it could, but I don't understand the science on that.
Yeah.
It's a little too big for that.
But back to our Earth, back to the hollow Earth. What interests me, what intrigues me, is to find out what is in there and who is living in there. Are there different societies, different races of humanoids or whatever it is, and why did they get down there?
Well, first of all, the recent one that came there, the most recent was probably the Germans in 1930, started in 39, as they started exploring Antarctica.
Yeah.
They found a huge cavern, and they started developing that into an underground city.
Yeah.
And they also found an entrance into the center of the Earth, and I have a book here on the shelf that talks about this. And they met some other Germanic people that has been there for a very long time, and they were invited in to set up a settlement inside the South Pole region, the Pole region, not the Antarctic continent. Is right in the polar region. Mm. And they were able to get there through a tunnel, a channel, or a tunnel with an U-boat the first time.
Yeah.
And after that, they will show how to fly airplanes through the hole. So they don't use that channel anymore, but they're flying through the hole now.
All right. Is this place called, by any chance, New Schwabenland?
Neue Schwabenland.
Yeah, right.
That's where their cavern is, and that's a different one though. The Neue Schwabenland, that is up in the New Swabia. It's in the Queen Maud's land of Antarctica.
Oh, it is up there.
Yeah, and in fact, I have on my website, I got a picture of what we believe to be the entrance into it. But the big hole at the South Pole, that's what goes into the area where there's a new German settlement. And there's about 2 million people there now. And of course, these Germans live there, and they can come out. They, of course, know several languages. Hey, they're from Europe, so they got an education. 2 or 3 languages is normal over there.
Yeah.
So they speak German. They can go back to German. They have German passports, many of them. And they got from other types of passports, so they can travel, look just like us, and everything is cool.
By the way, which brings me to another strange subject. When you say people from inner Earth, which are, what you say, amongst us here on Earth, trying to influence our leaders, or us maybe, to awaken us, maybe that could be the reason why the government wants to chip us to find out who is who.
That could be part of it. I think the biggest reason for that is to be able to track us and make sure that we know where we are and what we do. Because a part of the newer types of chips, they also tap into the neural net, the neuron system, so that you're able to I don't know about this, but the rumor is that they're able to also be able to record the thought patterns of the person.
Yeah, yeah.
In other words, your thoughts are no longer private.
Yeah, yeah. That's for sure.
So I don't know if they've gotten that far, but there are alien probes that was found to have some very strange properties with it, and they have recorded radio signals coming from it.
Yeah.
And these probes have been extracted from the human body and been under the microscope, and they see some schematics inside of computer schematics and circuitry inside of a crystalline little chip.
Yeah. That means actually they do everything to prevent us from making contact with people from inner Earth.
Yeah.
And that means actually that these people from inner Earth, they have knowledge and wisdom which would benefit us greatly, which means as well that they live in a much higher, what shall we say, frequency or in a higher mind of conscious.
To a certain degree, I will agree with that. And I think the biggest reason why they're covering it up is because of economics. Look, when you're flying discs,
Yeah.
you're not using gasoline, are you?
No, exactly.
No. See, there's free energy in there. And the powers that be, or the psychopaths, they don't want us to know about that whatsoever, because if free energy became the norm, then they couldn't charge us for it. So they would lose profits, and money is their god. So we have to overcome that somehow. And that is done by doing research, writing to your senator, call the senator's office, and if enough people start doing that, it'll clog the switchboard and they start listening to us.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell them, look here, you're going to do this. You're going to make sure this knowledge comes out, or we are going to re-elect someone else next time in the election. Oh, they're scared of that.
But there is a big scheme around all this. You know, they protect each other, they blackmail each other, whatever they do, just to keep us in check. And that means actually that we are controlled here on Earth by, we could actually say dark forces.
Yeah.
And their mindset keeps us in a lower awareness, in a lower level of awareness. And that's what they want to keep us in. And we see it in education system. They use against us just to dumb down people. Their biggest weapon is the money system and the law, as well, as they write it for us, and they themselves, they don't have to live by it.
No, that's, and as a novelty for you guys over in Norway, remember that inside the entrance to the center of the Earth, at the North Pole region, there is a large Viking settlement up there. Okay. And for those that head straight north and do not follow the compass, if they go towards geographical north, you will end up going in through the hole.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you have there was a Russian expedition that was supposed to do this last year, and they were supposed to go straight north, and they got permission actually to do it, but they couldn't raise the money to do it, so it didn't happen. I'm hoping they're going to try it again this summer.
Yeah, one guy who is talking about this as well is Dr. Bruce Agnew. Do you know about him?
No.
He's an American, and he is quite exciting. He has a radio show as well, and he was talking about making another expedition to find entrances to inner Earth.
Yeah. Well, you see the pictures of it. Go to my website. Even on the first page, I see some stuff that could very well talk about inner Earth. And of course, I also have a lot of NASA prints showing large ships floating across the surface of the moon. And there's 3,800 pictures on that website. Yeah. www.universal-consciousness-show.com. And you go into the blogs. I have Admiral Byrd's diary there and many other things that Well, it's so far out of the box they can't even see the box from there.
That's fantastic. Okay, we are almost the end of the hour. We said that we are going to do a show which lasts about an hour. We are now 55 minutes into that because we are going to do more shows, a sequel on that one where we could go back and talk a little bit more about Inner Earth. But what would be an interesting topic we are going to talk about in the next show?
I don't know. You pick one.
Oh, you told me several. And everything is exciting. We could talk maybe a little bit more about your book, which you wrote on higher consciousness thinking and spiritual science. What this is all about, how we can manifest our thoughts if we do it the right way, and how to keep ourselves and our body, the whole system, younger, to reverse age in a way. And which gives us which doesn't only prolong life, but it enhances our awareness as well. We get into a higher kind of thinking, right?
Yeah, we could talk about that. And in fact, one of my favorite subjects is actually the mastermind principle, where people can get together, 2 or more people. Hey, it's even scriptural for the people that read the Bible. 2 or more united. Together in my name. I am among you. And there is the mastermind principle is based on the principle of when 2 or more minds are united in harmony, they create a third mind that has the potential mind power of the 2 or more of them multiplied by each other.
Yeah.
And that is phenomenally powerful. And this way we can create our future. We can lay down tracks into the future and draw up that timeline that we create. And we have much more control over our future than we do if we tell ourselves, oh, well, whatever happens, happens.
Right.
Don't ever say that, because I'll guarantee you it will happen.
Yeah, right. Any other topics which you would like to talk about in the future shows?
Oh, we have, UFOs. That's always a good one. And but speaking of the real power of the mind, that is one of my favorite subjects to talk about. And also universal success principles, how billionaires think. That is one that is catching on really well on the other book that I wrote. And
you wrote another book?
Yeah. It's universal success principles and how billionaires think.
Oh.
If you are in business, like to be in business, or want to be better at what you do, or if you just want a better flowing family, you really should read this one, because this is what many of the billionaires do to create absolute miracles out of seemingly nothing.
Yeah. And they use other principles. They use, for instance, astrology and occult knowledge and all this combined to manifest what they want.
Many of them do.
Yeah, many of them do. This is why we are not supposed to dive into the occult, because occult, the word, has a negative connotation to it.
Yeah.
And they made it deliberate that way so that we are not going into that, because they say it's evil. Occult means just hidden knowledge, nothing else.
Yeah, and there is, I forget who said it now, but there was a billionaire that he was in an interview somewhere, and he got talked about this particular thing of the occult, and he said, well, millionaires, they don't seek the advice of psychics, but billionaires do.
Right. Yeah, I heard that too. Too. The problem is that occult knowledge is actually very positive, but you can use it negative as well.
Yeah,
and this is what many of these elites did, use it in a negative way. That's why they don't want the knowledge to come out, because we could use the same knowledge against these people. Because one big problem they have, they are so entrenched in this negative occult that they, within several decades or millennia, dumbed themselves down into their belief system, and this is our biggest weapon, actually.
Yeah, and if we just listen to what they tell us, they're telling us what they're doing, because the head of the CIA that was working for Ronald Reagan, he said in an interview, after actually interview, but they recorded it, and he said that when we find that everything the American public believes is false, we will know that our disinformation program is complete.
Exactly. With that, Åge, I think we close up for today. I thank you very much for being on the show, and I can tell to our listeners that in a short time we will do the next show. And as soon as I have my new website up and running, because the old one just got shut down, we will do a new show and I will announce it there. So let's say latest within a month. I hope before that. Is that all right with you?
Sounds good.
Åge, thank you very much for tonight, and have a good one. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, you take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
That was all for tonight, my dear listeners. I hope you liked what we were talking about, and look forward to the next shows and for the next announcements on my upcoming website within a few days, which is scorpion58.com. Thank you. God bless.